Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller like me, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
A good number of the group left Algiers in the second half of 1972. Eldridge Cleaver himself lived in Algiers from June 1969 until January 1973. A few stayed on, in particular Don Cox, the Panthers' former field marshal, for a number of years. Some of us remember the Panther connection to the Third World as it became reality in Algeria with nostalgia. I retain the image of them in Algiers, their sleek back bodies walking tall. Now if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. So if you don't want to ask any questions, I'll try to keep talking.
I'll ask a question if everybody's so silent.
Yeah.
I happened to visit Algiers a few months after Cleaver left.
Uh-huh.
I was simply a tourist.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been in Morocco, and I went to Tunisia as well. I've been in a lot of European countries, but Algeria was something else, okay? When I applied for the visa, which I did in I think, Casablanca, it's the only consulate in the world that ever asked me my religion, okay?
Oh, yeah?
And
They don't anymore.
my answer was, I was born Christian, but now nothing. I said it in French. I found that in 1973, the Algerian people had turned their backs on Arab hospitality that I was raised with. They were kind of very serious people,
Yeah.
and not very happy people. Is my impression wrong?
Not very happy people in 1973.
Yes.
In 1973, it's hard to say whether people is happy or unhappy. There were happy people and there were unhappy people, but in 1973, things were beginning to change. The years of euphoric happiness, the idea of being independent, was diminishing. And political lines were being drawn. There were basically by then, by 1973, there had already been a coup d'etat, military takeover by the army, throwing Ben Bella out of power. That was a big coup, and the population didn't react. Some individuals reacted, but there was no general uprising of the population after the coup d'etat. And little by little, things sort of consolidated. There was, I would say, three categories of people that weighed in on the political side. There was the army and the police and their organizations. There was the student and youth and women and political organizations that I would say were open to change and desired change. And there was the religious organizations and religious personalities who weighed in heavily. So that it's quite possible that you didn't see an absolutely happy population. Also, women were not free. Students were beginning to feel the crunch. So maybe you're right. Maybe they weren't happy-looking people. It's hard for me to judge. I was very happy there. So I worked hard and had very good colleagues who were excited about, still excited about independence, and still drawing plans for increased freedom and economic organization. So it's a little difficult for me to be absolute about the answer. Yeah.
Elaine, and I always thought that after 130 years of colonization, the last thing Algeria wanted was to be welcoming to foreigners. Would you say that the suspicion of what could happen remained among future generations?
No. With independence, you have to know that there were about 9 million Algerians and about 1 million foreign settlers. The foreign settlers pulled out en masse. About 900,000 people must have left in 2 months. They were the people who held down the jobs, who taught in the schools, who helped people who were in the health industry and so on. They all pulled out. There was nothing left. And the number of Algerians competent to take over were few and far between. So they were very happy to see delegations of people arriving from foreign countries ready to assist them, especially, for example, in the health sector. There were delegations that arrived from China, from the Soviet Union, from Egypt, from Bulgaria, from France. People who were anxious to help Algeria modernize and get going again. It was a city that had, from its outlook, from looking at it, it was very modern. But it had practically no cadres, no personnel. It looked very modern. It had modern buildings, and there was a theaters, there were movie theaters, there was a very big radio and television station that covered the country. There was, it would just look like any Mediterranean city, but there was nobody. There were very few competent people, so they were very happy to receive foreigners. On the contrary, and we didn't feel any oppression. We felt that we were part of this whole struggle, that we were taking part in the rebuilding of a nation, that we were building a new country. It was fascinating. We were very excited. Yeah.
In relation to what my friend here was asking, and what you're saying, I think the tendency, at least at that period of the Algerians, we don't smile. Simply. To the point that in 76, a friend, a young student from Sacramento, sent a letter with a picture of him smiling to his mother. He got a letter back saying, "Why are you smiling?" So there's a tendency, at least,
Yes, they were not a very smiling people. You see the smile. This man is from Algeria, and see the smile on his face. They were not a smiling people or a smiling country at any point that I know of. But they were very lovable people, very warm, very welcoming, very generous people. And we were received with open arms. And we worked very hard. We believed in what we were doing. We thought we were changing the world. And I guess we were.
I have a question about that. Looking back now, maybe feels like a failed revolution somehow. And if that's the case, do you attribute it to something? What would be that?
Oh, it was in many ways, and it wasn't. Yes, it was in many ways a failed revolution. That's for sure. Yes, we could feel it. The concentration of power. Well, the coup d'état, first of all, then the concentration of power in the hands of police, army, and organizations like outgrowths of the police and the army. Democratic procedure was respected, took place, there were elections, but they weren't necessarily democratic. And I would say that probably it's continued pretty much the same over all this half century. And I suppose you could say that of most of the African countries that became free in the 1960s, that many of them have had difficulty with democratic procedure and the creation of democratic governments. And there are a lot of reasons for it. The old colonial powers never completely let go. And they had few men and women to work with. There was so little education. 90% illiterate, imagine. And it was the same all through Africa. So that there was an open field for anyone with any kind of imagination. Yeah. Yes? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Libya.
I couldn't hear you either.
Come up front.
I said Libya had a much higher standard of education.
Oh, did they? I don't know much about that. I know that that Libya was very helpful to the Algerians during the war because my husband was stationed there for a while. He manned a signal corps station in Tripoli, and was a recipient. He was in charge of ordering and receiving war material through Libya. It was very helpful to the Algerians. They had quite a big station there. But I don't know anything about their education, so I really can't answer you. Yes?
Now that the people who centralized the power after the coup are aging out, what future do you see for government?
I don't really know because, you see, I don't think they see themselves. The president of Algeria, Bouteflika, is in a lamentable state of health, to such an extent that he doesn't appear in public. And his family and his entourage are trying to put him forward as a candidate again for re-election a fifth time. I don't know. Where's it going to lead to? They've got all sorts of economic difficulties right now. They've been solely concentrating on the oil and gas industries. And they haven't developed their own agriculture as they should have. They haven't resolved a lot of the major problems that a new country has. They haven't resolved the problem of women. They haven't resolved the problem of youth. They haven't resolved the problem of religion and its place in the society. It's tough. It would be tough for any leader coming in, and for the moment it doesn't look like there'll be a new leader coming in, and one doesn't see it in the cards. At least I don't. Maybe others do.
What do you think the implications from your experience there are for the United States? What are the kinds of lessons that we can learn and take
That's a tough question. I'm not sure I can answer that. I mean, the state of the union, in my opinion, is not very great. We have an educated population that isn't using their education, in my opinion. But what lessons can be drawn from the Algerian experience? The level of democracy here is certainly not the level of democracy in Algeria. So I really can't say. I find that very difficult to answer. No, I don't know what lessons can be drawn. We can always draw lessons from countries that haven't a real democratic system, that aren't doing as much as they should for their people, but nothing specific. Yes.
What lessons can France draw from Algeria? What
Sorry?
lessons can France draw?
What lessons can France draw? Oh, well, France is no longer a colonial power, that's for sure. They learned that lesson. They should have learned that lesson in Vietnam, but they didn't. And what lessons can they draw from the Algerian experience? Well, France has always had a very racist policy with regard to foreigners, whether they be Algerians or Americans. And I think that it's one of their major problems that they don't recognize. And colonialization was for them normal procedure, and racism was normal procedure. The end of colonialism didn't change it, didn't change their attitude. I'm talking very generally because, I mean, there are lots of magnificent Frenchmen who are not racist. But as a nation, they reproduce, and they reproduce. Yes?
Is there a hard situation where Algerians are still facing right now?
I can't hear you. I have trouble hearing.
Is there a difficult situation that Algerians had to face back then, and are they facing it still now?
How did they
Did you hear what she said?
So, what are the Algerians facing today? What difficult situations are Algerians?
Oh, they have, it's a society that depends solely on one product, on oil and gas. That has a problem of, they have a problem of feeding their people. That's a major problem. They have a problem of women in the work, and women coming out of colleges and into the work system. There are more Algerian women in college today than there are men. On an educational level, they've succeeded quite well. It's always been one of the major preoccupations of the country, and the budget has always been very strong on education. But there's a problem of the integration of women in the work society and the freedom of women in general. There's also a question of creating jobs for the young people who are coming out of these institutes and universities, so that they don't want to leave. They're desperately leaving, like many countries of Africa, see their populations desirous of a better life and taking chances that are unimaginable. And they're swimming to the north. They're swimming to Europe. And each African nation is facing that problem today. Yeah. So, if there aren't any more questions, if we have...
Here's a question.
Oh.
One. It's
Oh, the time I worked, I worked first in, my first job was in the tourist office. But there were no tourists. And there wouldn't be tourists for years to come.
What a job.
What a job, yeah. So then one of the technical advisors to Ben Bella, who was then president of Algeria, asked me to come and work with him in the press and information office of the Algerian government. And so I worked in the press and information office for a while, and until, it must have been about 2 years. And till Ben Bella named a new Secretary General, and the Secretary General thought it was unseemly for an American woman to have this kind of job. And so they shifted me off to Algérie Presse Service, which was the national press agency, which is a job I loved. And I manned what was called the English desk, which means that I read all of the press releases coming in from around the world and translated those that were of interest to the Algerian public. And I also wrote editorials and opinion papers and that sort of thing. It was a wonderful job. And then I also worked at the RTA, which was the Algerian National Radio and Television. And I did 3 programs a week. One was a program on Palestine. One was a program called Public Opinion, which I gave, which I choose a subject every week and give some idea of what people thought around the world. And then there was, and the third program was a kind of, I don't know, a kind of open series of interviews and small, tiny reportage about what was happening in Algiers, what programs were on, what art galleries were showing, that sort of thing. And then I worked at I taught journalism at the University of Algiers. That was my last job.
You must say this in your book, but how did you learn Arabic?
Oh, I didn't.
Oh.
I just knew a little Arabic. I learned a little bit. I knew expressions and so on. Everyone that I worked with spoke French. We only worked in French in those days. Yeah. Oh, yes. I mean, no one was capable. Algerians spoke an Arabic dialect, and the few people who spoke classical Arabic or the Arabic of the Arab world were not many. And all work in the ministries and in government offices took place in French, because the people who were educated in French.
But I thought they all left.
Oh, no, they didn't. The Algerians didn't leave.
Oh.
The French settlers left. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But the Algerians stayed, and work in the ministries and in government offices was in French. And by then I knew French very well.
From your perspective, if a generation wants to change the world, what would you suggest they do?
Oh, wow. I think that they should get interested in the climate, because the climate is going to get us before anything else. And I don't know whether it's not too late already. Yeah. According to a friend of mine, it's already too late. But that's what we should work on, is climate. Yeah.
How long did it take to go from a 90% illiteracy rate to so many people completing university and college?
Oh, a very short time. I can't say how many years, but the budget for education was one of the highest in the world in relation to the population. They felt the lack of education so intensely that the schools opened and teachers arrived from all over the world, and it was amazing how many students and how many children were were put into school, and women, girl children as well as boy children, and that was the one of the most amazing things that happened in Algeria. It was extraordinary.
Did it liberalize the population?
Sorry?
Did it liberalize the population?
Well, I haven't been there in 44 years, so I can't really say, but I would say that it liberalized part of the population. But even in small towns and small villages and so on, girls are being educated. They're learning the languages. They're learning French. They're learning Arabic. They're being educated, and it can't help in the long term to have some kind of effect on the country.
Is there a parallel that could be drawn between the Algerian Revolution and the Black Panthers in America? Is there?
Well, the Black Panthers, were part of they were the result of the slave population, and the Algerians were a slave population. From that angle, there is a parallel. There's also a parallel that they remained colonized as the American black was colonized here. They were not immigrants. They were an enslaved population, and gradually they came out of it through legal procedures and through time, because of time, to the point where they're part of American intelligentsia, American society in general. They're not. Everything hasn't been regulated, but nonetheless. And the Algerians have come into their own. They're masters in their own country.
Can we, in a sense, compare Black Lives Matters, which is what's happening now here, to what's happening in Algeria right now, or not necessarily in Algeria, like the surrounding countries, if we're talking about the Arab Spring? Is there can we think of it, although colonialism left, there is something that was left in there, and although Malcolm X and Martin Luther King had they were able to achieve these rights and get them, but there is still something deep in society.
Well, it's obvious that this is still a racist society, and that we still have to fight to relieve us of the racism that exists. There's no doubt about that. Algerians have internal problems, obviously, with different sectors of the population, the people from the south, people from Kabylie, and so on. There's obviously they have some problems of integration into a whole democratic society. And there's been a recrudescence of racism in Algeria, which is to be deplored. Black Africans coming from Nigeria, Niger, and so on, Chad, whatever, through Algeria with the intention of arriving in Europe to live a better life, because they're not getting it in their own countries, being shipped back by plane loads from Algeria, which is to be regretted. There's a recrudescence of racism, which is pretty obvious. Whereas here, I would say, on the contrary, there's a lessening of racism. There's a real effort on black organizations and all sorts of organizations to reduce the problem, to resolve the problem. Yeah. But I think Algerians have to be aware of the fact that there is a recrudescence of racism. Yeah. Anybody else? It's been fun. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.